Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. So I have a special guest in the building for not just our 500th episode,
Ooh.
but since I've come back to Cowboys YouTube, as you guys know, as my mom passed, I came back with some UT content and just getting back into the flow of things. But now it's time to address my Cowboys. We are 21 days, officially 3 weeks from the NFL draft, the 2021 NFL draft, and I want to have my good friend Mr. Landon from the Lando Show on YouTube, and I just want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself because this is your debut on Fanatic Perspective, and I'm really, really excited to have you on.
Yeah, man. Like you said, the Lando show on YouTube is just kind of one of those things, right? They say if you do what you love, you never have to work a day in your life. So that's just kind of what I'm here doing. I play baseball on the side a little bit too, but this is my second passion. So um, learn from you a little bit from the best, right? You and Tran. I actually came across your channel back in 2019, and so I've
Dope.
pretty much stuck with you ever since, man. And so we've had plenty of just banter back and forth on Twitter and other social media sites, right? Just hitting it up, chatting it up about Texas or the Cowboys, or we've even had a few Spurs and Mavs conversations, right? So,
Oh, we get after it. We're gonna have to have some Spurs Mavs content. I haven't had some Spurs
yeah,
content on here in a while, but we're
yeah,
NBA heads, and I know we were up late last night watching
sure
Suns
were.
Jazz, which was a phenomenal game,
That game
one
was
and two
crazy.
seed.
Yeah,
But we are here to talk about the Cowboys. And by the way, guys, like you guys see below, subscribe on YouTube to the Lando Show. You can also follow him on Twitter. I will have all the links in the comment below pinned. So make sure you show him some love. He records all the time and has content out about Texas Longhorns football and everything and a lot of stuff in pro sports that some of the stuff we don't touch on,
yeah,
Cowboys, maps, the whole bit. So pleasure having you on, brother. Now, guys, subscribe to my channel too. We're trying to get to
yeah.
10K. We're trying to get to 10K. And good news is we are now we need less than 800 people. So if you want to be on the movement, hop on the train, subscribe. We appreciate it. Now, let's get to the meat of what we want to talk about, which is the NFL draft. The Cowboys having the 10th pick in this year's draft. So much fodder from Jerry Jones this week about, him being
Yeah.
in love with a particular player. And then you texted me about us, being in the interest of moving up. I want to start here though, because I want to start big picture and then we'll get more granular with what we want to break down and whatnot. Me and you, when we were kind of prepping, you said something that really caught my attention about this being the most important draft, probably of like your adult Cowboys fandom.
Yeah.
Um, and at first I was like, man, the 2016 draft was pretty important, but I
Hmm.
think you made an excellent point about that retroactively being important. What
Yeah.
was the energy and the momentum of our fan base? Every draft is important. Every draft we
No
get
question.
excited about, right?
No
But
question.
this particular draft feels different.
Yeah.
Landon, why is that?
Man, so you actually kind of put that retroactive perspective into my head a little bit. Like, you go back and evaluate the 2016 draft, right? That was coming off of a 4-12 season, I think what it was. Tony Romo injured his back, and then you're kind of just sitting there with so many different question marks, right? But you have the whole aspect of quarterback was hurt, 4-12, shake it off, right? Well, it's everything's going to be fine with number 9 healthy and upright under center. I just sort of see it as and then so again the 2016 draft retroactively speaking, right? Comp pick, fourth round, 135 overall. Dak Prescott shows up,
Right.
and who knows where the organization would be right now had Kellen Moore not broken his ankle in
Or
in
if
training.
they or Kellen, so that's one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or if they traded back, if they completed the trade they were trying to do to get back into the first round to get Paxton Lynch at the time, or
Or
if they
was it
they
Connor Cook?
drafted Connor Cook,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So he was kind of they literally fell into him in a somewhat similar manner that they fell into Tony Romo and the pre-existing relationship he had with Sean Payton. But go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say too to kind of pinpoint off of that, if if Jerry Jones has his way, Paxton Lynch is a Cowboy, and the Cowboys are trading up in that draft. And again, who knows where we end up being right now. We're probably not sitting here having this conversation right now talking about why this one in 2021 is the most important. But I just think that it's because the personnel that you have built around your now franchise quarterback, right, and Dak Prescott moving forward,
who is now signed.
Thank goodness. we no longer have to go back and
Have that
on that anymore. That was those takes were getting very tired. But you evaluate the roster in totality, and everybody kind of agrees, right? The Cowboys offense is not really an issue. Like we see the weaponry, and you essentially have 3 number 1 wide receivers, right? People may or may not argue about Michael Gallup there, but the offense is in place. You've got your quarterback locked up, and then you go and restructure your 3 most important linemen up front protecting him, right? You got Tyron Smith, Lyle Collins, and Zach Martin all restructured, flipping the proverbial switches, right, to make room for some of the free agency stuff that was happening this year that we thought may happen. And so now, so you see the vision essentially is when you flip those switches, you're thinking long term. You're backloading money, meaning that you expect those guys that you're flipping the switches on, like the 3 linemen I just named, right? They're going to be here for the foreseeable future as a part of your plan as the Dallas Cowboys to go try and win a Super Bowl. Okay. Now, the reason why I say that is because really what happens is you're sort of projecting like your draft, how you go back and evaluate it. It's about 2 to 3 years in advance before you know what your hits and misses were. Okay. So 2017, right? We talked about yesterday too. There was only 1 player selected from that draft that's still on the Dallas Cowboys roster right now, and that's Jordan Lewis. So you lose Cheeto, you lose Taco, obviously to the Dolphins 2 years ago.
You didn't even get to the point of even having a conversation about an option with Taco. That was just a flat out miss.
Exactly. So point being is Cowboys ultimately aren't sitting in the position that we're in right now, where the entire fan base, myself included, is sort of hoping for some sort of defensive aid coming in at 10, right? But we're not in this situation if you hit on the draft in 2017, 3 years ago, because you don't miss on Taco. You don't miss on Chidobe Awuzie. You don't miss on Xavier Woods, who's now no longer with us, right? So you've got all these holes that you now have to fill. And so you put yourself in a hole to where you never want to be heading into a draft saying, this is what we need. This is the position that we have to get. We've got to go get this guy. For instance, Tristan Hill, 2018. We needed a defensive tackle. Rob Marinelli, or was it 2019?
19.
Catching up, yeah. So
because we traded the first for Amari Cooper.
That's right. That was the Amari Cooper year. So I just think that you got to think long term. You got to think of this offense is ready to go compete for a Super Bowl right now. The defense is not, and so you can go a long way towards salvaging that and kind of piecing together some of your holes that you're now left with, since 2017, right? So like, that's the whole purpose. You've got a 4-year window on rookie contracts before you got to decide what to do with them. And we're in that year now. Those guys are gone. So we've got to figure out how to fill holes. We've got gaps,
major gaps. Yeah.
Most particularly at the cornerback position. But up front, you and I talked heavy about the impact that defensive tackle has on you. If you can't evaluate the state of your linebacker group without legitimate big boys up front anchoring the interior of your defensive line. So we've got holes there. And then of course, the refusal to address the free safety position in the draft as well. Like whether that be first round, second round, you name it. But long story short, there's holes everywhere. And so if we want to maximize what we have right now that we may not have again after this season, because Michael Gallup likely is, elsewhere next year as well, right? So it's like Zeke, there's no telling with 300 plus touches a year for his 4-year career, 5-year career, how long he's going to hold up. Like, say what you want about him, about whether or not he's explosive as he was his rookie season. He's still on the field, right? The best ability is availability. So, and then of course, Dak Prescott, we saw how quickly things can change, right? When, he's trying to extend a play in week 5 in 2020, gets tackled wrong, and boom, he's done for the year. So like,
and your season's over.
Exactly.
Your season's over. I
So,
think I agree with so many of those points, man. And I want to give a quick shout out to Skywalker Steel and the
mhm.
fellas over there that put together the Around the Nation episode, which was a collaboration of a bunch of Cowboys YouTubers. I thought it was very educational. It was great content, stuff that you can't get anywhere else, honestly.
I haven't seen
People
that.
like yeah, oh yeah, it was dope. So he put together, a bunch of up and coming Cowboys YouTubers,
Hmm.
and a lot of things you touched on, especially the Michael Gallup point. One of those brothers on that panel made that point about Michael Gallup being essentially a rental for this year.
It's a rental. Yeah.
It's a rental, right? Because you're
Yeah.
talking about flipping the comp pick, or if you trade him for a pick or trade him for a player,
Yeah.
essentially it's a rental.
Yeah.
So going to the greater question here, right, of historical significance and
Mhm.
why this draft is so important. I think you nailed it. This team, if they hit right with these defensive picks I'm not saying necessarily this season, but in the next, say 2021, 2022, you
Yeah.
should be gearing yourself up to make a legitimate run if you can solve some of these issues. And we see teams when you hit on the right player, and we're not just talking about at 10, you got to hit at 10. You
You have
cannot
to.
miss on top 10 picks, especially when you're not necessarily a bottom third team, in my opinion. I think
Yeah.
we were more middle of the pack,
Yeah.
but with our quarterback going down, we get an opportunity to pick here.
Hmm.
But with all that
You
being
got
said,
to take advantage of that too, especially with this
you
talented of a roster
you
offensively.
have to take advantage of that. But
Yeah.
where you can go to the next level, and I look at a Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for example, and they go and pick Antoine Winfield Jr.,
Yeah.
and who has, by the way, NFL pedigree, like another particular player we will discuss here shortly, and the legacy and whatnot. And he
Yep.
comes in, he's an instant game changer for Tampa Bay defensively, for their culture. Turns
Yes.
like it doesn't
Leadership.
need to take forever.
The
It doesn't
the
need to take
charisma.
forever.
Yeah, it doesn't, and it could be instant, and that's all you need is that one game changing, type of player. So I want to go back just real quick. Like you talk about the importance of picking inside the top 10 and just the value that pick holds historically, right?
Hmm.
I want to just kind of put this out there right now, and just maybe I think a lot of people are already kind of in this boat with me as well. But you talked about Jerry Jones, the noise that he's made regarding whether or not it's a smoke screen, right? We can talk about that all day too ad nauseum, but the
Sure.
smoke screen of, oh wow, the Cowboys are infatuated with Kyle Pitts. Oh wow, the Cowboys are interested in acquiring pick number 4. I'll just say this, obviously I'm not in charge of the organization, but if it's my team, if I'm the GM, it's hard enough as it is to not only hit on, top tier draft capital, right? It's tough. It's tough to hit on those guys, right? So
Right.
just the talent evaluation in itself is already difficult. Let's not make that more difficult by giving up extra draft capital in the process to go and acquire somebody that's not a sure thing, especially when you consider all the holes that we've got, right? We've already talked about it. Like the Cowboys I think, are tied for the third most picks and draft capital in this draft, this 2021 draft. Let's use that. The more darts we have, the more chances we have at, one of these guys sticking and helping us out on the defensive side of the ball. You know what I
You're
mean?
you're you're a baseball player, man. You're actually a professional baseball player on the side,
Yeah.
right? And so one of the things that you need, I mean, using a baseball reference, you want as many at bats as possible.
Yeah.
You want as many at bats as possible, and you never know because this team has stumbled into guys. Look at Donovan Wilson, who they're excited about now, who's a late round pick out of Texas A&M.
Six,
So
six round
you
draft
can,
pick, I think, right?
yeah, 6th round
Yeah.
draft pick. Like
Yeah.
they these picks matter. So volume matters. So when to your point, when they're starting to talk about smoke, I hope it's just smoke screen stuff. I hope
Yeah.
they're not because in this particular
And
draft
for sure.
context matters because you have a bunch this is a quarterback rich class. And so when you are in a draft like this where there's this many quarterbacks and we're not talking about like even 2018 which was like the last like big quarterback class where you had 5 of them go in the first round, right?
Hmm.
That was like spread across the first round.
Yeah. Yep.
This you could have 4 or 5 of them go in the top 10.
And that's
That
what we
is
hope for. That's what we
that's
want.
what you hope, that's what you want.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
know, so like I'll pick up the phone if somebody wants to move up. Let's say one of them's falling, whether it's Trey Lance or Justin Fields, and y'all want to come to 10, and you think you can come get your
Come
guy.
on. Come on.
I'm
Show,
open for business,
show me the money.
but I do not see any reason, because think about it this way: remove the quarterbacks that you don't need,
Right.
you're at least going to get a top 5 player in the draft,
Right.
like non-quarterback, right?
And if you study all the mocks, all of them tell you that the first 9 picks are all going to be offensive players. So you're really getting your pick of the litter
You could
at
potentially get
10
the
with the
best,
best defensive player.
right, that you evaluate.
Right. And
Now,
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 too, let's also acknowledge, right? We're in the business of being real and keeping it real with the people, right? We're not sitting here selling you Super Bowls every offseason, which that's obviously what we want. We're going to cheer for that. But the reality is it's not ever going to happen. We know how hard it is to get there. Okay. But if the Joneses were perfect at evaluating and hitting on draft capital, we're not sitting here in this position at 10 saying, oh gosh, we got to get a defensive player, which is not necessarily the
exactly.
reality. I'm just trying to relay the point of how difficult that is already. Let's not complicate that by getting rid of more draft capital and moving up and then risking our long-term, because I mean, let's be real. If you're going to try to go from 10 to 4, that's at least one extra first-round draft pick that you're going to be giving up in the future. So
Don't do it, Jerry. Don't
don't,
do it,
please,
Steven.
please.
Well, all you guys in the front office, man, just
And I'll even go so far to say is this, like, I almost don't ever want to move up in the draft unless I'm going after a quarterback, unless I'm going to get my franchise guy. Like, stick and pick, baby.
so who do you want at 10?
So here's where it gets tricky. For me, I've pretty much accepted that it's going to be either Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn, who pretty much widely regarded and accepted by everybody in the media, everybody in, the scouts. That, I mean, if you listen to Brian Broaddus on 105 through the Fan, he'll tell you, like,
Shout out to Brian Broaddus.
shout out to Brian Broaddus, yes sir, and Jeff Kavanaugh. But yeah, I mean, they'll tell you those two corners. But again, here's where it's like I'm of the belief that you should always take the best player that's available to you,
I
right?
agree.
And so I know you're with me on that as well. And so that's where you have to really evaluate. Like, if you don't take a defensive player at 10, let's just say, as fans here, right? If we're worried about not taking a defensive player, whatever defensive player that may be at 10, and then I'll get back to be more specific with your question. But if you're worried about that, then you've got something wrong with you as an organization. Like, you couldn't, if you have to take one player at number 10, you're saying that there's nothing you can do with the 9 other picks that you have in this draft. There's nothing that you could have done in free agency. There's nothing that you could have done before the trade deadline, right? Like, something's wrong. If your organization is broken, if you are totally dependent on one defensive player who may or may not pan out, right? If that guy is who you are solely dependent on, you have problems. Okay, so that's what I want to preach, is to kind of just keep an open mind there at 10, while also acknowledging that it's very likely that the best player on the board to us at 10 is one of those two corners. If that's the case,
And if they align, beautiful.
Exactly. So who do I want at 10? I say, if the best overall tackle on the Cowboys board is there at 10, that's who I want. If the best overall receiver or pass catcher, i.e. Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts, is on the top, at the top of the Cowboys board at 10, that's who I want. If the best defensive player at the time, because they're like, we talk about, they're going to get their pick of the litter at 10 with the best defensive player. If it's J.C. Horn, if it's Patrick Surtain, if it's Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, if, whoever, you name it, like, if that's their best player on the board at 10, that's who I want. So again, if they don't have the best player available mentality, number 88's not on our team right now. CeeDee Lamb, right?
That is a phenomenal point, because a lot of people were, I think a lot of people were excited when we drafted CeeDee Lamb last year, but you also had a lot of people saying, dude, we need another pass. Like, why didn't we draft Chase on and all this type of stuff? And it's like, you saw the immediate, like, okay, we did get the best player for us at that position, because you could make the argument, retroactively, Justin Jefferson, blah blah blah. But for us, we drafted the best possible player in that position,
Yeah.
and we just kept it moving.
And let's also,
I,
if we take Chase Young at 9, or I'm sorry, at 17 last year, let's just say Chase Young wasn't going to be good enough to help us the issues that we had defensively last year.
and he was phenomenal for
And he was a
Washington, and yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that's how bad the defense was. No one player was
Historically bad.
was was going to fix that. But I think so. My philosophy has always been best player available, especially in the first round,
Yeah.
and then you start to evaluate need throughout the draft. And if I navigate a little bit more, it needs to be a little bit more nuanced. And I think it worked out well for us last year. Like we got Baby Diggs right
Yeah.
after that, who I think probably had a late first round grade on a lot of people's boards. For whatever reason he slips, we were
Stayed all
able
the
to
way to
take
51. Yeah.
right. We take advantage of that. So and that was a spot that did fill a need, and we
Mhm.
got value there for best player available. So I think that's what you're looking at now.
Can we also, maybe I'll let you elaborate on it as well, right?
Sure.
I think it's important to talk about why Trevon Diggs, just like the role that he was thrust into on a historically bad defense, right? Let's just imagine, let's say, for instance, Byron Jones doesn't leave us in free agency and we do extend him, which I wish would have happened. Let's just say that he's got another number one corner alongside him. You want to talk about how that kind of just, I just thought it was a great point yesterday when you hit on that, just about how he's kind of thrust into the fire as a rookie.
He was, and it was sink or swim,
Yes.
and he lost his battles, and there was times where, you have growing pains, but I love guys that I'm big on pedigree in terms of, what are your ties to the NFL. I think it's just different how you train, how you
Yeah.
prepare. I think before I hit on my Diggs point, obviously his brother's one of the best receivers in the league, had an amazing year last year for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
You look at J.C. Horn, his father Joe Little Big Horn, as
Yes, sir.
they used to call him, and what he did in the league, and he was an outstanding wide receiver for many years. You look at Patrick Surtain Senior, who still makes me feel so old because I remember him and Sam Madison and Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas
Jason.
and that whole Dolphins defense just being, like, wow, I remember trading for Patrick Surtain on Madden. I think I've told that story before.
That's
So
crazy.
I like dudes with some pedigree.
Hmm.
See Antoine Winfield Jr. to my earlier point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of Diggs, he was asked to go out there to cover once. He was asked to go out there and deal with, DeAndre Hopkins and all these other guys and it was a crash course. But I think he gained confidence at the end of the year because he started making plays.
And he
He
learns.
started challenging guys, right? And he didn't lose his confidence. He didn't lose himself. I think right now the Cowboys feel better about Diggs than the Lions feel about Jeffrey Okudah, to be honest with you. And I
I'd say
know
100%.
I know the brother was dealing with injuries, but in terms of how you feel about him confidence wise and what he was able to do
Hmm.
in a COVID messed up, jacked up year.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So you do have a guy that you can work with, but I think, going to the point you made about Byron Jones and the miss there, right? And
Hmm.
in terms of us not, you actually were the one that brought up Chris Richard coming in,
Yeah.
changing his position, or else that's a miss for the Cowboys. That's almost a bust because he was average safety. He's probably on the same
Hey,
level as like
he's probably still playing safety, and he's out of a job right now. If Chris Richard
right,
doesn't exist, you know what I mean? Like,
right. And they create this whole box and one scheme, and he's outstanding, and
because
people are upset because he's not getting picks and all this type of stuff. But you see the
nobody.
instant you see the instant value he brought to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
But with him on the Dolphins, Xavier Howard becomes all pro. You see,
Yeah.
Xavier Howard got like 10 picks last year, right?
Yeah.
So what if Byron Jones was on this team with a baby Diggs, with a playmaker on the other side? Because I think that also hurt Cheeto in
No
his
question.
development.
No question.
Because
Yes.
Cheeto never got, like, he's being challenged out here, and it messed him up, man. And
Yeah.
I wish the brother the best of luck with the Bengals, and don't let him lie to you. He went for the bag. Okay, let's
Yeah.
just
No.
be
Yeah.
real. He
Definitely.
went to secure the bag, and I
Can't
won't
hate on.
hate on him for that. Can't hate on him for that.
No
But when it
respect.
comes to drafting these guys. Personally, for me, just answering, the question at 10, I would like to see Patrick Surtain and
Yeah.
Diggs reunited. I think they complement each other well. I'm a big fan of J.C. Horn and how physical he is.
Yes.
My question more so is he the right fit in what Dan Quinn wants to do defensively? If they can answer that question, I might be more favorable to Horn and just straight up man situations
Hmm.
and running down the field than I
Hmm.
am Sertan. But I like Sertan's pedigree. I like how his technique. I know there's concerns about the deep speed stuff, even though he
Yeah.
allegedly ran. Don't take anybody's 40 times.
No. Yeah. Take
With,
that with a grain of salt. These pro days, man.
I know he allegedly ran 4.36 or whatever, but
This right here, that's a lot different than a laser. You know
right.
what I mean? We gotta
And the
evaluate
film shows it too.
for sure.
The film shows it, but there's so much value he can add
Hmm.
in what Dan Quinn wants to do, and you saw like what Richard Sherman could do, like
Hmm.
and some of those guys that were this old Seattle corners. They weren't burners. They
No.
won on technique. They won
Richard
on
Sherman's a 4.5
physicality.
guy.
Exactly. So I,
People
I think
people
I
think that
think
you don't run a 4.4 in today's NFL, you're slow, and that could not be further from the truth, man.
now I'm excited for the day they get to really figure out this whole GPS testing on
Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
because that eventually will, I'm not going to say replace the 40-yard dash, but it will eventually, people will start to put more weight on it with the
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
GPS testing.
That's true. Because like how
Um,
running with pads on, you know what I mean? It's like it's a totally different thing. That's a good point for sure.
so I'd be remiss if we didn't mention Kyle Pitts, because in a lot of people's eyes, he could be the second best player in the entire draft.
Yeah.
And
Mel
the
Kiper
way
would agree.
the way he's tested in conjunction with how dominant he was dominant at Florida. Florida was a completely different team
Yeah.
anytime he didn't play. See the LSU game, see the Oklahoma game. Completely
Mhm.
different team. Kyle Trask was a completely different quarterback. That's why I never bought the Kyle Trask Heisman stuff, because I'm like, he's not even the best player in his own offense.
No. Yeah.
That's 84.
That's rare. That's rare at the quarterback position if you're not in college right now.
Right. So I do think there's an opportunity. See, here's the thing. If the Cowboys go that route and they go with Kyle Pitts,
Hmm.
I'm not mad. I'm
No,
excited.
you
And,
can't.
and I know what they have at tight end with Blake Jarwin coming back
Yeah.
and Dalton Schultz's development. That was awesome.
And
They
now,
also signed
yeah,
Sprinkle.
Jeremy
Yeah.
Sprinkle.
So Sprinkle's in the mix. So I see all that, but Kyle Pitts is so much more than, he's an OW. He's an offensive weapon. He's so much more than a tight end, and he does give you a dimension that you don't have on this team. So I do think that'd be dope. The only thing is you are taking more of a risk, because you're really going to have to hit on defense and any of your other picks.
that just that
You're
just
really, really going to have to hit.
that really, yeah, it just zooms in on the microscope on how important picks 44 through 238 are, right? Because the Cowboys have the 44th overall in the second round, and then two more in the third round, and then it just definitely kind of creates that magnifying glass. Just
So
that
speaking of the magnifying glass later in the draft, we're going to continue to speak on the top 10 pick, because
yeah.
that's where but in terms of the stuff that we really get, that Jeff Kavanaugh gets excited about, and Voch Lombardi and all these guys, in terms of these
I
mid-round
love
picks.
Outcast. It's awesome.
Who's your pet cat in this year's draft?
So I actually already said his name earlier, and
Uh-oh.
so like you can't. This is a guy I'm really high on. He It's crazy. So you can't I can't really say he's necessarily like a pet cat. Usually when I hear that term, it's like who is kind of a dude that's pushed a little bit further down the board than further than he
Sure.
should be. This guy that I'm going to talk about isn't necessarily that guy, because I think he's pretty well known, at least to the people that are very active in just the pro days and the combine historically outside of this year, right? All that stuff leading up to the draft. To me, that guy is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the hybrid style linebacker, like weak side linebacker slash safety out of Notre Dame. And the reason I just say that is simply just the position versatility, right? We talk about more and more about how the game is evolving with just more teams depending a lot more on just living and dying with the ball in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just the more guys that you can have that aren't that they're positionless, the better off you are. You got that position versatility when it doesn't matter if it's first and 10 or third and 2. Like, you got confidence in your personnel packaging out there, and you don't really have to worry. It just makes things easier for guys like Dan Quinn to keep his defense intact in high leverage situations.
So for me, a guy I would like to see us pursue later in the draft and is Ardarius Washington from
Oh man,
TCU,
yep, yep,
football player.
yep.
I want people like that in the
Stud.
backside. We're missing. I don't care about the measurables. I don't care about the 40. I know what I see on film, and
I
that's
don't care.
just
I don't care if he's 5'8".
I don't care. I don't care because they
People.
keep playing. They keep getting stuck in this mindset that's so
Yeah.
frustrating as a Cowboys fan. Where, and I'm not even talking about them pigeonholing guys. Like, they get stuck in this mindset. Like when the Honey Badger was on a free agent. I think he was leaving Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and they came out or somebody came out from the organization, whether it's Jane Slater or whoever, that was, kind of being the mouthpiece,
Yeah.
and said he's not a scheme fit.
Mm-hmm.
Stop it. I
Yeah.
want football players, or he doesn't fit what we're looking for. And he
Yeah.
goes to the Kansas City Chiefs and he wins the Super Bowl, and he's been an all pro the last couple years.
Stud.
Stop it. Get me football players.
Hey.
Because I'll tell you this, watching him, we see these TCU dudes, we know them well, right? Because
Yeah.
they've been kicking our ass and for our Longhorns, and we
Nobody.
know what's up.
Nobody gears up for Texas more than TCU, and that's crazy.
Mm-mm.
Like, you would even, like, they're up there with OU, right, on at the Cotton Bowl. Like, those dudes are ready. So yeah, as Texas fans, we definitely know who TCU is. That's for
I
sure.
want I want people who are badasses. I want people, especially back there, like the Donovan Wilson thing. Like, and I'm saying that as a Texas fan, like I knew instinctively, like he just has a nose for the football. Now, am I saying Donovan Wilson's going to be a Pro Bowler one day? No, but
Right.
he makes plays. He
Yeah.
actually can turn the football over. And I've said this from the college game, football in general. Nick Saban's talked about this. You're not going to stop people outright all game, every week. You need to create turnovers. You need to be good situationally, right? You need to be good in 2 minutes. You
Yep.
need, and you need to be good in the red zone defensively.
No
You're gonna
question.
give up points. You're
Yeah.
gonna give up big
You're gonna
plays.
give up yards.
You're gonna
Yes.
give up yards.
Yeah.
But if this team, like we
Especially
were
in this.
talking about, like the Browns game last year, where we got down 30 or whatever.
Yeah.
But the offense, like we did start that game hot and
Right.
came out and got a couple scores.
Mm-hmm.
People shouldn't be at 31 points in the third quarter
No,
or almost hitting 40.
the
That that
Cowboys
that
gave up
that's ridiculous.
300 yards rushing. I never thought I would see that. I never thought I would see that. Or was it 400? I think it was 400 to the Browns,
They had like 3 or 4 different brothers with 70 yards rushing, and then Odell Beckham had
including
that
the Ernest
reverse.
Johnson. Like, who the heck is the Ernest Johnson? Nobody knows who that is, and that dude was an All Pro against us in week.
He was. He was. I know
Good
he played
Lord.
for Charlie Strong at USF. That's all I
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But
Um,
back to your point about our Darius Washington, real quick. Like,
sure.
if we abided by the height rule, right? If that was everything, because let's be real, like if Ardarius Washington is what, 5'11", 6 foot, as opposed to 5'8", he's probably talked about getting going in day one or on day one. But now, like you're talking about, I've seen this dude being mocked in the 4th round. So if it's a couple inches, so like to your point, Pet Cat, like this might be a dude that changes our organization, the course of our organization on day 2, possibly day 3, right? But if we abided by the height rule, guess what? Russell Wilson isn't a quarterback in the NFL. He ain't 6 foot. Drew Brees isn't a Hall of Famer. He ain't 6 foot.
Right.
Kyler Murray isn't Offensive Rookie of the Year. He ain't 6 foot. I'll tell you that right now. I shook his hand. Like, I'm looking down at the dude. But the brother's a stud, man. Like,
Right. Absolutely. No doubt. Mm-hmm.
so I'm just saying, like, if you can play football, you can play football. That's
And the safeties in this draft are interesting because I feel like this is actually there's more depth there. Like there's a lot of people that are going to be banging the table for Richie Grant in the second round
yeah,
out of UCF,
yeah. I seen this.
and he blew up at the Senior Bowl during practice week and rave reviews. I just think this safety draft is really interesting because I don't think any of them are going to go day one. At least in my opinion, I
I
don't see
agree.
anybody going day one. But I think there's so much value there. To your point, day two, day three,
Mm-hmm.
where there's some good football players there that
With,
they're flawed, but they're
right.
good football players there that can potentially start for you year one. You can't have any more, Tristan Hill picks where it's like, is he showing up? Does he love football? Like, give me the dudes that are culture people that are flying around and
Yeah.
let's make it happen.
And that might be
Um,
Patrick Surtain. That reminds me of Nick Saban's recruiting video, right? That leaked of him talking to somebody. I forget who it was, but he's sitting there in his office, right? He's talking about if you come to Alabama, the best you're
yep.
practicing against people that are better than the guys you're going to be playing on Saturdays. So if we add Patrick Surtain, they've got that familiarity, right, with Trevon Diggs that you referred to earlier. These guys are used to feeding off each other's energy and like trying to out hustle, out compete, outwork each other. Like that's the type of stuff like you need that dude, that dog to come in and change the entire mentality of your defense because it
It
was
makes the whole team better though,
it
too,
changes everything. Yeah.
because now I have in one-on-ones, I have Diggs and Sertan versus Cooper and Lamb or Cooper and Gallup. That's good work.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
good work, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and everybody makes everybody better.
Iron
So
sharpens iron, baby.
iron sharpens iron. Absolutely, that helps Dak Prescott become a better quarterback, right? Because
That's a great point, man. I didn't even think about it that way. That's a great point.
yeah, I think it really helps the culture. I mean, because they got to get Dan Quinn off to a good start, and I think he is a significant upgrade
Yeah.
from Mike Nolan.
Mm-hmm.
I think the signing of Keanu Neal and to your earlier point about the modernization of NFL defenders, we're heading in the right direction with
Yeah.
thought process.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Mike McCarthy in this organization, they need this. They
Yes.
need this, and I'm excited to continue to have these conversations with you, Landon. Coming up in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Some of the conversation, the other things that we can touch on in some of the future videos is what can't we do? We dabbled around it
Yeah.
today, but
Yep. We did.
as more news comes up, you guys, we will be here. Guys, make
Absolutely.
sure you subscribe. We're going to 10K. Make sure you're following Landon on YouTube. Hit his channel. Subscribe. I'm so excited to have him on here, and he is Cowboy brethren. We're gonna have a lot of content together coming up here because we just rap. That's what we do.
That's what we
Um,
said. 20-minute phone call yesterday. It turned into an hour and 20 minutes, man.
hour and 20-minute phone call, and
We're
I'm like, yo, we
fine.
gotta. These are the conversations that got to get recorded, brother.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to touch on just before I leave, guys, is coming up there. We're gonna have more collaborations. I've been promising collaborations. Landon does UT content as well. We're
Yep.
gonna have collaborations with other Texas football content creators.
We got some good
Tran and
chamber.
we have some good stuff planned. Tran and I, as y'all saw, we did our spring ball preview with the Fire Steve Sarkeesian podcast. So that's still out there. Go check that out. Tran and I will be back in the saddle doing some more content next week. But
Hey,
so much going on.
shout out to Tran,
Absolutely, he's probably lifting right now.
one of the OGs. Yeah, he's swole. Got to
Absolutely.
stay swole for all of us.
Well, Landon, stay healthy out there, brother, in your training,
Sure.
and much success to you in your pitching. But I appreciate you taking some time out today to
It's a
join
pleasure.
me and talk ball, man. It was a blast, brother.
Yep.
Y'all, make sure you subscribe. The Lando Show. Appreciate y'all. We out.